Well, it's my pleasure right now to be joined by a very esteemed member of the Louisiana media. Proud to call him a friend, fan of all great things in hard rock as well. Charles Hanagriff, good to see you, Charles.
Good to see you, JD.
We're here at SEC Media Days, and we saw LSU here Monday, Charlie. Thought Coach O did a pretty good job. Austin Deculus, nice reward for an offensive lineman. Those guys don't get to step into the spotlight a whole lot, and so a fifth-year guy, he gets to come. And then Derek Stingley Jr., a shy guy. He's not one who's embraced the interviews in the past. I think LSU kind of nudged him a little bit and said, hey, look, if you want to be a Heisman Trophy candidate, you want to be up for these big awards, we need to showcase your personality a little bit. What were your takeaways?
Well, first of all, that the normalcy of this is refreshing. That we're somewhat, it's not 100% normal, but it's getting a lot closer there. Derek Stingley, I think, is emerging as a leader. You know, in 2019, he was a great player, but there were so many leaders on that team, so many upperclassmen that he didn't have to take that role, and now he does. And I think he understands that. I think he's embracing that, and I think that's going to really benefit LSU. Deculus is a great story because he's got a chance to play more games than any player in LSU history. Let that sink in for a minute. And he is an extrovert. He's kind of born for the stage. He was really good, I thought.
We had some fun with Deculus. He asked our friend Jared Joseph from WVLA, when Jared introduced himself and said he's from Baton Rouge, Austin's face lit up. Oh, hey, man, did you fly here or did you drive? And Jared said, oh, I drove. And then when I asked a question, I said, Austin, the local guys, we drive. There's not a whole lot of flying. Got to be real far, you know. Gainesville, Knoxville, places like that. But and in Stingley's case, Charles, in 2019 on that national championship team, two huge interceptions in the SEC championship game against Georgia come to mind right away. Late in the first half against Auburn in Tiger Stadium, makes a huge pick to kind of cancel out a punt he fumbled earlier. But last year his numbers were down for whatever reason. Only a 10-game season as opposed to 15, but he didn't have any interceptions after he had 6, and then I think he only had 5 pass breakups, and the year before he had 21. So he's kind of looking for a bounce back on the field a little bit.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things. Number one, when he missed the opener, it seemed like he got behind a little bit, that he just wasn't quite himself right at the beginning. But the second thing was, and I think this is probably more important, is everybody knew who Derek Stingley was last year, and they didn't have a whole lot of interest in going that direction. I think you saw Eli Ricks, I think, finished with 5 or 6 interceptions and returned a couple of them for touchdowns. They were going to go with the freshmen. They weren't going to go with the All-American. So the opportunities, I don't think, were there as much as they were in 2019 when not everybody knew exactly how good he was. And
from Coach Orgeron's perspective, I would kind of agree with him when he compared it to the summer of 2018. Look, there's some clicky headlines out there about hot seat and this and that. LSU and the economic situation they're in, and 2 years removed from the greatest season in the history of the school. And I expect they're going to bounce back this year. I don't see a scenario where Coach O would be fired at the end of the year. Now, look, if they go 7-5 or something like that, then we have a discussion going into 2022. But how do you think he handled the questions?
Well, I thought he handled the questions fine. I don't know that this has as many comparisons to 2018. Simply because of the quarterbacks. In 2018, listen, they went through a competition, but we knew that Joe Burrow was going to be the starting quarterback. There was a significant gap in experience between the two players at that time. This year, I don't think we do. I think that there's a legitimate competition where you can make a case very strong one way or the other for either Miles Brennan or Max Johnson. And I don't think that was the case in 2018. I think they went through the competition, but we knew it was Burrow. So they can talk about bringing back the Joe Brady offense, and I didn't think that it really ever left. And Ensminger was still a coordinator last year. This is a lot of this season is going to come down to how successful the LSU quarterback is, because as much as Orgeron talked about getting back to 19 last year or yesterday, it was the quarterback. That was such a big part of it. They've got talent everywhere else. They've got an excellent coaching staff. Is the quarterback going to play great? Not Burrow great, just is he going to play at an upper echelon?
I still remember 2018, I think it was the first day of fall camp when Coach O said we put Burrow with the fourth-string offense. Do you remember that? We all kind of chuckled and we're like, I don't even think there is a fourth-string offense. There's not even enough guys to make a fourth-string offense.
Coaches do that sometimes. You know, when the Cowboys traded Herschel Walker, or when they signed Herschel Walker out of the USFL, Tom Landry said, well, he's our fourth string running back. And nobody believed that either.
No, I don't think so. That's funny stuff. Yeah, in the quarterback competition, look, Miles Brennan's been here a long time. He was here in 2017 pushing Danny Etling as a true freshman, got some reps in 2017, and from what I remember, you can correct me on this, it seemed like Matt Canada was a Miles Brennan fan and maybe Coach O was a Danny Etling fan, go with the veteran, but whatever the case may be, he's been here a long time and I guess had the misfortune, if you want to call it that, of the greatest quarterback in LSU history transferring from Ohio State. Miles Brennan got a national championship ring out of that, so no problem there. And then last year, Max Johnson really showed some moxie. Look, a lot of crazy things went LSU's way in that Florida game to win that game, but he played well in that game and then wins the shootout against Ole Miss. So this is going to be pretty interesting to see, Charlie. Coach O said that he would like to decide, or he expects to have a guy named the week before the UCLA game, was the words he used, and it may go down to the wire. And you don't want anyone to transfer too, right? That's the battle in today's modern college football. It's
a big deal. And, go back to one of the things, you go back to that 19 season, they had 4 quarterbacks. About halfway through camp, they had 2. And if you were to lose a quarterback at this point, your backup would be a true freshman who is, simply not ready to play at this point. So absolutely, that roster management, that if we're going to talk about keywords here, roster management is something that coaches have to deal with every day from 1 to 85 on the roster. And not just during the offseason, every day during the season too. I can't imagine the type of, I can't imagine, because they've brought in extra personnel just to handle roster management and the transfer portal, in and out on the transfer portal. So, yeah, they need all 3 of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, and we joke sometimes about these coaches and how much money they make. And, some people say they're overpaid, and then we say, well, they might be underpaid. Joking about, 100 guys on a roster, the phone calls, the text messages you could get at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, with all the different things that could go on there. But that is a very interesting dynamic. The transfer portal has changed everything. I just chatted with Jay Johnson, the new LSU head baseball coach, the other day. He admitted, hey, I really don't like this transfer portal, but as Will Wade says, these are the rules of engagement. You either get on board or get left behind. So you really kind of have an NFL situation now where guys can bounce around teams and everything.
Nobody grew up with the transfer portal. You listen to these coaches, they get asked questions about ex-teammates or coaches that they've coached with or players that they've been recruiting for 6, 7 years back into their early high school years. Nobody grew up with the transfer portal, okay? JD, if we're lucky enough to be doing this job 20 years from now, we'll talk to coaches, they'll say, well, I grew up with the transfer portal and I got into coaching the transfer portal. We don't have that right now. Yeah. It's very discomforting to know that you can have something beyond your control, and college football coaches love control. Yep. Something completely beyond your control wreck your team in a very short period of time. And I'm not going to say that they are underpaid. Let's just say that they're paid market value. Your market value is what you can get, so they're paid appropriately, I'd say.
Yeah. I didn't mean that, but for sure, I look at things, and I know this money comes from different places, but you think of people trying to cure cancer, or people trying to raise money for charity, or all these people are sweating and trying to raise every dollar, and then when you give some guy $20 million, you just go away. It just makes you kind of sick to your stomach, these buyouts and everything.
No disagreement. The coaches' agents have been running over athletic directors for a long time now.
Let's talk about, there's so many things I can chat with you about. It just popped into my head here. So some interesting issues here at SEC Media Days, and I asked the commissioner about it, and I asked Coach O about it. Somebody tweeted, well, Jacques sure is banging this weed thing today. But it has been something that's been a hot topic with LSU fans, kind of something beneath the surface that people have talked about how LSU is at a competitive and recruiting disadvantage against other schools because of their marijuana and their drug policy. We have seen Sadiq Charles tweeted and then quickly deleted, if you want to smoke weed, don't go to LSU. They'll crucify you for it, so to speak. They'll make you look like a bad person, whatever. and he sat out 6 games in 2019. Dare Rosenthal had similar issues. He goes to Kentucky. He's eligible immediately, and as many people have told me over the years, Tyrann Mathieu, not in a million years, would have been thrown off the Alabama Crimson Tide. So where do we stand on this issue right now?
Exactly the same place we've always stood on it. The league does not want to get involved in this issue because, quite frankly, they can't come to 14 people in a room to agree on a policy. I've been asking this question for 10 years. It still boggles my mind that a league that goes to the nth degree to try to maintain fairness. You know, they won't go to 9 games because that would imbalance the schedule in home and away. You have scholarship limitations, you have coaching limitations, you have recruiting limitations, all in the interest of keeping everybody fair, which of course it doesn't do. Alabama's still better than Vanderbilt, but they go to great lengths to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity, and yet on 2 things that are so important and really do strike a blow at competitive balance, a comprehensive drug policy and a complete rotation of interdivisional opponents, they won't touch. And you asked the question multiple times yesterday, and you got the Heisman. And if you asked it again next year this time, you're going to get it again. I've been asking it for a long time. Frankly, I'm glad you picked up the torch because I've grown tired of asking the question. And if you asked about competitive balance as far as scheduling, you'd probably get the same from more than not. I was really pleased to see Dan Mullen yesterday say, hey, you know, this permanent opponent thing, not a great idea. Maybe we should change that. But he's still in a minority. So I don't expect you're going to get much movement on that.
But just imagine us as Saints fans watching the NFL, you know, let's say the heyday of the 49ers or whatever. And none of our guys tested positive this year. We're all good. We test that in-house. And then the Saints were testing themselves, and Pat Swilling's out for a few games or whoever it might have been. You know, that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It would almost be like if one team had an advantage in the salary cap. Like this team gets $10 million more to spend.
Yeah, and the scheduling thing has been a hot topic. LSU is going to Lexington, Kentucky for the first time since I think Charles Scott got stopped on that 4th down play in triple overtime in 2007 when LSU lost to Kentucky the week after they beat Florida in the Jacob Hester game in Tiger Stadium. So that comes to mind. And yes, LSU still plays Florida every year. And that's just that's where we are with
when
that.
You're playing non-conference opponents more than you're playing conference opponents, more often than you're playing conference opponents, I'd look at it. Just me.
And then last year, LSU, because of the pandemic and everything, they were shot putted up to Columbia, Missouri. And I still don't think LSU wasn't going there until 2023 or something like that. And Missouri had joined the league in 2012. And I think LSU fans, if they could have planned to go, they would have really enjoyed the trip. Columbia, it's a beautiful town. It was in the fall. The leaves were turning on the trees. Great campus, great pizza restaurants and things that people could enjoy. But that's where we are with that. You know, and this year, for example, you know, if you're an LSU fan, what do you want to spend your money on as far as a road trip? Do you want to, you know, okay, hey, we're going to throw everything in the hat to go to the Rose Bowl, or we go back to Starkville again, we go back to Tuscaloosa again, you know, Oxford, the same places we see every other year. So.
And Kentucky's a nice trip. Not only, you know, can you go to the football game, but you go see horse racing. A lot of people like to do the Bourbon Tour. And this year, the Cincinnati Bengals are playing, I believe, the Green Bay Packers the day after LSU plays Kentucky, which is not a bad drive from Lexington. So if you want to go see Joe Burrow, it makes for a nice weekend.
It does. We have looked at that, and I think a couple of us have emails into the Bengals public relations to see if we could get passes. All right. Name, image, and likeness. Now, for those of you who don't know, Charles is still doing radio, and he'll still be involved in the LSU postgame show, and he's not going away. But now his primary job is working for a business called Matchpoint. And Matchpoint basically is kind of like a dating app, but it sets up a Derek Stingley to partner with the walk-ons and things like that.
Our platform allows for multiple offers. It allows for offers from talent to business and business to talent. We're unique in that aspect. And what we do is we give you the opportunity to negotiate a deal. Our algorithm gives you the best opportunity to match somebody that will be productive to your brand. And through that negotiation, it eliminates the need for multiple phone calls, multiple meetings, all of the things, billing, invoicing, receivables, all of those things that, frankly, college athletes don't have a whole lot of time to do. Their time constraints are pretty serious. So if you can offer them on their phone a very easy way to do this. Now, you still got to do your research. You've got to talk about the brands that you want to be involved with, and there's certainly that process to go through. But once you do that and you want to make an offer, you want to accept an offer, you want to negotiate an offer through the hundreds of businesses that we have on the platform and the thousands of athletes that we have on the platform, you can do that very, very easily at Matchpoint.
And so the overall idea of this, the other day, a few months back, we did a story on this guy, Lionel Tiger Thomas, who played defensive back at LSU in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we interviewed Trev Falk as well. And I remember Trev saying, Tiger and I were from the same area. We became friends because he had a car, and I didn't, and he would give me a ride. And it really struck me that a guy making 100 tackles a year at LSU and playing in front of 92,000 fans at the time still had to get his buddy to give him a ride back to Lafayette because he didn't own a car or he couldn't afford one. And so these are the kind of things that if Trev Falk was playing today and if he can, pocket enough money on endorsements to pay for a ride, I'm all for that.
I am too. And I think that when name, image, and likeness was first announced, people that, hadn't really gotten a firm grasp on the law thought that, well, all of a sudden, you're going to have the shoe companies come in and give hundreds of thousands of dollars to, all of these athletes, and it would look like a mini NFL. That's really not the case. There's going to be the Olivia Dunns of the world, but they're rare. More often, you're going to get the cases of an LSU athlete, maybe not even a football player, that's going to get several $100s, maybe in the small thousands of dollars to do deals locally. An athlete that is from, say, Houma or Denham Springs or Lafayette that has tremendous name recognition and value in that home community, to do a deal with a local business there for a reasonable amount of money that the business can afford, and that means a great deal to the student athlete. And again, our platform makes it very, very easy for those people to connect. To match.
Yeah, to match, exactly. There's the name. And, you go back to the late 80s, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the school has always been the only person that's been able to promote the athlete. I had a poster in my room, Hodson for Heisman, throw me something, Mr. Todd Kinchin, on a poster, billboards, to come to a game, they put the athletes up there. So there's always been that aspect of it. So when you talk about jealousy and is the left tackle or the right guard going to get jealous of the quarterback, those kind of things have kind of always been there. Absolutely.
And if not just the quarterback, I think that's an easy one. What about two offensive linemen or two defensive backs? What has always motivated playing time, okay? And jealousy over playing time, and maybe that was something. Listen, I think you talked about how the coaches have to balance the transfer portal and roster management and all those things. How about 85 egos? 85 guys who were the best player where they were coming from, and now have to all merge, and for the common good. The good coaches will figure that out, and the ones that don't probably won't be around very long. So, and I understand, in the NFL, players are older, but everybody knows what everybody makes in the NFL, and they somehow make that work. These players are probably going to come around to the same thing. We don't like change in sports. We like things exactly the way that they've always been. This many teams in the playoff, with the bowl game, the Sugar Bowl's on New Year's night. We like all those things. Don't
Right.
change anything on us, and when you do, people get nervous. They will adapt to this.
I wasn't around. I don't think you really were either. Did people complain about going to the Superdome after leaving Tulane Stadium? Did anybody say, you know what, I want to stay at Tulane Stadium?
Not after they got in the Superdome, I don't imagine.
Right. So, and yeah, to your point, I mean, I've heard things about just the dynamics of having Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis on the same team. Two guys at the same position with that much talent, and the egos, and sometimes who got their feelings hurt and who wanted this or who wanted that. That's just two guys out of 85. You get
two guys this year. There's two quarterbacks, and one of them is going to start, and the other one is going to be extremely valuable to LSU. but they're going to have to stay in it mentally. They're going to have to, whichever one it is going to have to overcome the idea that I went in this competition, I didn't win it, but I'm one play away. Only got to look back to last year. All 3 quarterbacks started games. They're going to probably need both of these guys, but one of them is going to have to mentally get over the fact that they didn't win the starting job for the game against UCLA, and that's as maybe as challenging a thing as Ed Orgeron's going to have to deal with all year.
And to your point, we looked at TJ Finley in that game against Texas A&M last year. You don't want a true freshman playing in a game like that, right? And so that goes back to your point. You don't want a Miles Brennan to transfer out or whatever and have to play Garrett Nussmeier in a big game if it would come to that. So, all right, a few more things wrapping up here. Certainly, you mentioned normalcy right off the bat. Last year, I'm sure we'll reflect back on last year and we'll see video and somebody said, why aren't there anybody in the stands? Or what's going on? Why is everybody wearing masks? There'll be some kid that comes up and be asking those questions. But, just the normalcy aspect of it. I mean, last year I drove right down Nicholson Drive on the day of the LSU-Alabama game, which was in December, which that's out of whack as well. And there wasn't a soul to be found. We didn't hit a stop sign or stoplight. We just drove right into campus. It was depressing. So there's bigger problems in the world, but the energy of college football is such a huge thing, and I'm very looking forward to having it back.
I think everybody is, and we don't have quite a full contingency here at Media Day, but we've got a lot more than we had last year, and I think there's still going to be some trepidation on the part of some as far as going back out to stadiums, but I think the overwhelming majority is going to say, you know what, I missed college football. I didn't go to games last year. I'm going. I want to be back in the stadium. I want to be part of that excitement, that electricity. It's a part of our culture, especially here in the South, and I just can't imagine that there won't be some return to maybe not 100% normal, but really, really close this fall.
Charles Hanagriff, I enjoyed it, my friend.
Thank you, Didi.
Good seeing you here at SEC Media Days.